Hi, I am Bill Hodges, and this is Spotlight on Government. And today I have a Tampa City Councilman with me, Bill Carlson. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
You're brand new on the council.
Yep.
Is this your first time in politics?
Yep. First time running, first time getting elected. So we started.
And you won.
Yeah, I won. So it was a great win, and won almost a year ago in March, and then started on May 1st with the new city council.
Now you're District 4.
Right.
How many districts are there in this city? 7.
So we have districts for north, south, east, and west. I'm the south. District 4 is South Tampa, and then there are 3 that are citywide.
And you'd have Bay Shore and down to McDill?
It's kind of south of Kennedy, including Davis Island Harbor Line. The line actually jags along, but kind of south of Kennedy.
What made you decide that you wanted to run for politics? You're very successful in your field. And what made you want to go into a whole different field?
I never really had aspirations to run for office, but through my firm, I have a PR firm, been very involved in the community and tried to lead on a lot of efforts. One of the big ones was the turnaround of our airport back in 2010, which I worked on with Jason Busto and Steve Burton, who's now deceased. But lots of things in the community, but I was unhappy with the pace of change. I felt like Tampa was falling too far behind other cities, and it was time to step up and make things happen more quickly. And so I decided to put my name and reputation on the line to run and try to push for change.
Boy, that's hard on a family, though.
Yeah.
You have some children, I understand.
Yep. I have kids who are 9, 10, and 17. And they helped me with the campaign. If anybody remembers one of my ads, the little one at the end said, "Don't let this cute little guy down, vote for my daddy." And he wrote that. One day the kids came home from school and they said, "Are you going to run TV ads?" And I said, "Maybe. Why?" And they said, "Because we already know what we're going to say. We want to be in them and we know what we're going to say." And so I used their scripts. And we recorded them saying what they wanted to say.
Out of the mouths of babes. Yeah. Obviously, they were right. You got elected.
Yeah, so there were 3 ads, one for each of them.
Where did you go to school? You have a background. You know, you didn't exist as you were elected. You existed going back a few years. What is your background? Are you from Tampa?
So I grew up in Sebring, which is part of the greater Tampa Bay area. We grew up going to University Mall, going to Tampa Bay Center, watching Dr. Paul Bearer on TV. We had all the same radio stations, the TV stations, read the Tampa Tribune. But undergrad, I went to the University of Tampa and studied marketing. And after a short stint...
Good for you. That was my undergrad.
Oh, yeah, great. Think about the mayor now, and 2 or 3 of us on city council went to University of Tampa. So it's put out a lot of leaders. One of the reasons I went there is Bob Martinez, who became governor, went there. So now they have a sports center named after him.
I was just with him this past weekend.
He's a great guy. But I went there undergrad and got a marketing degree. And then the Rotary clubs from this area approached me and said, "How would you like to go overseas, all expenses paid for a year?"
Wow.
They had a program called the Ambassadorial Scholar Program, where you go overseas and you represent your area in the United States in other countries. And I picked Singapore because it was far away, and also because it's regularly ranked the most competitive economy in the world. And I wanted to learn some of Singapore's ideas and experiences and bring them back. So I studied there for a year, and then I worked for a marketing consulting firm for 4 years. Worked all over Asia with Singapore as a base. Went from studying the Singapore government to advising them, and then came back and joined our firm. And one of the projects I worked on when I first came back was promotion of downtown St. Pete. This is early 90s. And I worked with the city to accelerate the growth of the arts community and promote the arts community in St. Pete worldwide. And then 2 years later, there was a race riot in St. Pete. And I realized that you can't just focus on downtown. You have to focus on the entire city. And so I went back to graduate school.
It's like the human body. You just focus on one part, the rest of it's going.
Yeah, exactly.
Going to pieces.
And so I went back to graduate school. I went to the Harvard Kennedy School, got a degree in public administration, but studied, how to not only how to grow innovation companies in the business sector, but how to address issues of poverty and racial inequality, et cetera. And then came back and bought our firm and have built it up. I call it a for-profit social enterprise because
What is the firm's name? You
Tucker
haven't
Hall.
mentioned that.
Tucker Hall.
Tucker Hall?
Yeah, and I call it a for-profit social enterprise because we give so much time and money to the community on important issues. Like the turnaround of the airport, we spent at least a couple $100,000 in time and probably $50,000 to $100,000 in cash helping to turn around the airport. It was a major effort.
You know, we moved down here from Dayton, Ohio in '99. And one of the major reasons we moved down here was that airport. It was the most civilized airport I had been in my entire life. I was a professional speaker traveling around the country, actually out of the country, and it was so neat to go into that airport and be bang, you're at your terminal, wang, you're on the airplane, and coming home was just as easy.
So one thing is that I think, and this is the reason why I ran for office, we need to hold government agencies accountable. When the airport was created around 1972, George Bean was the patriarch of it, and he brought in the best minds in the world, several engineering firms and others, and innovated this idea of what they called horizontal elevators. So it was the first kind of hub and spoke system where you wouldn't have to walk very far, and it won international awards. He stepped down in '96, and someone else took over, and the airport declined after that. We lost, over the next 14 years, we lost 60% of our international flights, where the airport wouldn't give us a $100,000 subsidy to an airline for international flights. They gave a $500 million subsidy to a mall. There were a lot of things that were going on that I didn't agree with. We had gone from being one of the top airports in the world to not even being in the top 10 list domestically. And so this group of us pushed, really led by Steve Burton, to change management at the airport, brought in a new management team, and under the leadership of Joe Lopano and his team.
I think he's fabulous. Everything I've seen with Joe has been really, really good. Now, there's a lot of people in the background working really hard. But without leadership, the people perish.
You have to have a vision. You have to be focused on the right things. You have to bring in the right team. And he's been there 10 years now. I begged him, please stay a few more years while I'm in office. But
I want him on the show. I've never been able to get him on the
really?
show. And I think he's a hero.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have him come on and talk with us about the airport.
He's been the leader of economic development in the region, too,
Yes.
Inspirational leader. But think about his background was that he was in charge of marketing and customer service at Dallas-Fort Worth. He had brought nonstop flights to China to Dallas-Fort Worth. And so Tampa needed to upgrade its experience. It was great when it was first designed, but it had fallen down. In fact, Norma Bean, who is the widow of George Bean, the founder of Airport, did an ad for me. So I had 4 ads. I had 3 with my kids and 1 with Norma Bean, where she talked about how I helped, with my partners in the community, bring back George's legacy because the airport had fallen down. And anyway, there's a longer story connected to that. But I think the idea is we can't say that we can't achieve high vision in the community. The last airport director said, well, we can't get international flights because Orlando has Mickey Mouse and Miami is the international hub. And we said, yes, we can. The numbers show that we can. And
we are.
Guess what? They've landed lots of international flights. Some of them we've got back that we lost. But now we're getting more even, and they're bringing money into the area. Every person that's on one of those flights spends about $4,000 when they get off them.
Is that right?
And they estimated the European flights, I think, every time they land, they're dumping about almost $200,000 into the economy. And they're landing every day. But they're also essential to us doing international business. And if we're not doing international business, we're not competitive. We have to be able to compete internationally. Our companies have to create value that people all over the world want to buy. And we have companies like that, but we never allowed them the access that they have now. And we're going to land more flights, too. That's a great team that we have there.
We don't, as a person sitting out here, living in the area, think of Tampa as being a corporate town. Vacation, we've got Busch Gardens, we've got Ruth Eckerd Hall, we've got a lot of neat things, but we don't think of it being a corporate town. But when you then look very closely at it and you see the Port Authority and all the good things that are going on here, there's a lot more than meets the eye.
Yeah, well, I think there are 2 main reasons why people think that. Number one is that the biggest companies in the region are mostly business to business. I mean, with the exception of Raymond James. Who's ever heard of Tech Data or Jabil? You don't buy anything from them. If it was IBM sitting there, then you would know that it's a brand that you buy from. But they're the biggest in the world in their businesses.
And the banking companies that are here.
Yeah. The other thing is that in the 70s, the head of economic development in Pinellas said, we want to move away, create a plan, which I have. We want to move away from retirement business and tourism to manufacturing, medical and defense manufacturing. And so they focused on high value small businesses that they could grow. And that's why St. Pete, Pinellas County are the head of Florida in medical device manufacturing. In Hillsborough, they focused on call centers for like 20 years.
Right.
And still...
and nobody likes call centers.
Yeah, I mean, I knew when I came back in '94 that the call centers was going to move to places like India and the Philippines. And it was very difficult pushing against that. And still, the EDC is not as effective as it could be. For some reason, Hillsborough has never been very successful at economic development. They show numbers, but big numbers of low-paying jobs aren't something to brag about. The other thing is that Hillsborough, because it had land to grow, the economy has been driven by real estate development growth. And we need to move away from it.
They have controlled much of the political landscape in this area. And that's not good. I mean, we have problems. You turn on the tap, are you going to get water? Or are you not going to get water? There's a lot of problems that I see with that.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to do is make sure we focus on high-value jobs. What we really need to do is the same thing that Asia has been doing forever, which is focusing on building entrepreneurship. We need to start our own companies and grow our own businesses. We shouldn't be recruiting companies from outside. We shouldn't be spending lots of money from outside. And more importantly, we shouldn't be measuring success based on buildings. The last mayor, who I was not fond of, measured all the success in terms of how many buildings came to downtown. Well, guess what? Orlando, St. Pete, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Jacksonville, they all built more buildings than we did. So we're the laggard in the region. And just like the airport, if I had said to people, or when I said to people 10 years ago, our airport is falling behind, people didn't believe me. And I had to show the numbers and show, look how we're not performing well. Had we not turned around the airport, Tampa Airport would have been to Orlando like St. Pete Airport is to Tampa. We would have been taking trains and buses to Orlando to fly out. Instead, people are flying into Tampa now and then driving over to Orlando. And we hope that the airport will continue to be competitive. But we've got to turn around our economy. I created a scorecard just on Tampa. Most of the scorecards are regional, and the Tampa Bay Partnership just rolled out their regional scorecard last week. But if you want to look at Tampa data, which hardly ever is presented, go to tampascorecard.com, tampascorecard.com. And that's my presentation, my analysis. It's using census data, which is the most accurate data you can get.
Correct.
And what it shows is that for the city of Tampa, the middle class shrank in the last 8 years. In one of the biggest economic booms that we've ever had in our country, the middle class in Tampa shrank. How is that even possible? And the people in poverty increased. That shows that we weren't focused on the right things. We've got to turn the situation around. And if you look, St. Pete's middle class grew, and their people in poverty shrank.
I have two friends that are young. They left Tampa because it was too expensive to live here. Nobody cared. They had to drive forever through horrible traffic to get to their work or pay more than they could afford. And I don't see any incubators to help young people find housing that they can afford. And if you can't keep young employees, how do you keep the thing going?
So what happened in the last 8 years is all the focus was on downtown, and all of it was focused on subsidies for developers, a few developers. Most of the developers complained that they were ignored and it took forever to get permits. Now the mayor is changing that process. The new mayor is changing that process.
Who I particularly like.
Yeah, me too. And she's bringing in what I call professional management to the city of Tampa. She's replacing most of the department heads with professional managers. You can't run a city based on ego. You can't run a city based on the whims of one person. You have to run it professionally, and it has to be data driven. The chief of staff that she hired was not only her deputy when she was police chief, and the one thing that Tampa excels in is we have the lowest violent crime rate in the state. Then he was the deputy administrator in Pinellas County. He's very data-driven. I'm very data-driven. And we have to be honest and look at the data, just like we did with the airport 10 years ago, and say, where are we? We're not doing very well looking at the data. And Tampa, compared to St. Pete even, Orlando, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, is not doing well. And we're way, way behind Charlotte and Austin. So you can have lots of rhetoric and talk about how great we are and motivate people, and people were very inspired by those speeches, but it wasn't true.
But only as long as the speeches keep coming. There has to be meat behind them.
Yeah, there was no substance to it. And so I'm in the position of unfortunately having to tell people, hey, we're not doing that well.
The emperor has no clothes.
Yeah. Do you know, you talked about housing. In Singapore, the home ownership rate is around 94%. The state average, and we can't copy their system, but they have a system like that. The state average for home ownership is 65%. St. Pete is 58%. Tampa's is 48%.
Really?
It's embarrassingly low. And so on city council, we've been pushing, and the mayor is interested in working on all kinds of affordable housing solutions. But if you're only focused on downtown, and you're only focused on what I call the edifice complex, if your legacy is having a few pretty buildings, then you're not going to be focused on the solutions that help people to rise out of poverty, to find housing, to build up value and equity in starting their own businesses.
One of the friends that I was talking about moved to Seattle, high-tech area. He's single, and he moved into, I'm going to call it a beehive. The apartments are narrow and thin, but they have the fastest of the internet. They have everything you need to get along for the single person. Even a married couple without children could live there very nicely. They gave them a bus pass and a transit pass. All of that came with the housing. And he's just as happy. And I said, I'd really love to have you back here. And he said, no way.
Yeah, it's sad, but we are keeping a lot of people, and those inspirational speeches were successful in keeping many people here. But what we need to do is be honest about the numbers. We need to look at how do we solve the problems. Tampa has the second worst poverty rate in the state. Luckily, we're lucky that Miami is so bad because we have the second worst poverty rate. We imagine when we go into a recession. This is the top of the economic boom. When we go into a recession, we're going to have lots more people in poverty, and it's not acceptable. We have to figure out how to bring people out of poverty, and we do that by creating wealth in the community.
Okay, we've got a problem. I agree with you. I see the problem. What solutions do we have? We can always talk about problems, and if we keep going, we can find tons of them. But what do you think of the primary solutions to bring Tampa to where it ought to be?
I think number one is...
You were right with the airport. Airport's great. But how about transit?
Transit is another important issue, but the way you build value and equity is through entrepreneurship. And East Tampa was completely ignored for 8 years. In fact, harassed to some extent. So what we need to do is focus on all the areas of the city: West Tampa, East Tampa, North Tampa, South Tampa. Even South Tampa felt neglected because only downtown was focused on. We need to focus on all parts of the city and provide the basic infrastructure. Do you know that the last mayor built a $12 million boathouse in Julian Lane Park that benefits...
$12 million for a boathouse?
That benefits rich kids from the Northeast that bring their boats down. There's one main community center in East Tampa, and the members of the community came before us and said, our kids can't go there because rat hairs are falling out of the ceiling. And so I had to propose a resolution to ask the administration to get rid of the rats. And I got a 7-0 vote on that. But why? And the new administration fixed the problem. They got rid of the rats. But why is it that the main community center in East Tampa was neglected? We want kids to go to after-school programs. We want them to participate.
Keep them off the streets.
And we are not only not building new community centers, we let the one they have go to waste. And there were 2 plans to renovate and or replace it, and the last administration ignored them. And we can't do that anymore. We've got to focus on everybody and build up, build our entrepreneurial base. Transportation is a really important issue, and we'll know.
That's one of my problems with downtown Tampa. I live in Sun City Center, and honestly, I don't come to downtown Tampa more than 2 or 3 times a year. I'm just not going to put up with the parking, the problems getting in and out.
So DOT has solutions that they're looking at for Malfunction Junction, I-4, and 275.
You can sit there forever.
But with the taxpayers or the voters approved all for transportation funding, and we'll find out in a month or so whether that goes forward or not. If it goes forward, there's a whole set of solutions. If it doesn't go forward, there's a different set of solutions. And so in a month or two, we'll have a better idea. And there are lots of ideas on the table, no definite consensus as to where we'll go with all of it. But everything from bus rapid transit to people talked about rail and other solutions. So we'll see where we go.
I, along with a lot of people, have more problems with them building more Lexus lanes, toll roads. I mean, come on, people. There's got to be a better way than paving over America.
Yeah, one of the problems with that is that you're taking capacity away from everybody else. And so there are a lot of solutions that we need to look at for transportation. And
now, don't we have incubators right now in
technology.
Ybor City and things like that?
We have technology incubators all over the place in the region. In downtown, we have a couple, and then Ybor. They're all in their co-work spaces where companies are being started, and all of that is showing signs of success. There's a group of tech people that have built a program called Synapse, which is bringing technology people and entrepreneurs together. And so we're starting to see the emergence of a grassroots movement, but we need to accelerate it more. And there were lots of speeches in the last few years, but no substance. We need to bring substance. The other thing is the arts. The arts were ignored and pushed down for the last 8 years. I worked with the new mayor when she came on board to create a program called the Mayor's Forum on the Arts. And we brought 650 people together to talk about the future of the arts and rebooting and restarting the arts. And the arts really are the future of the economy.
Really?
Think about
when we have a huge poor group in this area, the arts I think of, and maybe I'm looking at the arts wrong, they really play to a very affluent class versus all these other people.
So the way, this is a good conversation, the way many people think about the arts is if you can make your car payment, make your electric payment, and you can pay for your house, then if you have money left over, that's one of the options you can do is buy art. And that's true. But what we see is that the communities that thrive economically have a thriving art scene.
Okay.
And there are a few reasons why. If you talk to the fastest growing technology companies in this area, a lot of them are based in St. Pete. Why? Because there's a thriving art scene.
Oh,
and
really?
It's not only that that the top workers want to work in an arts community or a creative community, it's that their pastime is the arts. On the side, they're trombone players or trumpet players or painters or sculptors.
So we're talking about the employees of these high-end companies.
If we want to attract the best and brightest employees to drive the acceleration growth of these high-tech companies, we've got to have the arts to attract them. And it's not just setting up museums. There's got to be a thriving grassroots art scene, which Tampa has, but they were not cultivated in the last 8 years.
No, I think in St. Petersburg for arts.
And so it's an inextricable part of the future of the economy. The other thing is that there's been a lot of focus in the last few years on STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. I think that's a mistake. The reason why we're focused on that is because there's a current shortage of workers. Mm-hmm. But think about Accenture, for example, has 60,000 software robots taking over white-collar, process-oriented jobs. So anything any routine where a white-collar worker does the same thing every day, that's being taken over by software robots. Just the same as mechanization took away blue-collar jobs, software robots are quickly taking over white-collar jobs. In 10 years, the economy will look completely different. So if a software robot...
That's scary.
Exactly, it's replacing almost everything. It's going to replace lawyers, doctors, PR people. Everything's becoming automated. So if we train people in STEM, we're really training them in the future to be robot repair people and think in a very specific way. What has always been the value created in the American economy? Why is it that innovation which comes from creative people who are disruptors, and they're either born that way or they're taught to think analytically and creatively. And so the arts and creative thinking are not just an amenity, it's the future of the economy. The people who will be successful in the future are the people who can think ahead of the artificial intelligence. If the artificial intelligence is based on standard behavior, the people who think differently are the ones who are going to innovate. And so we need to be training our people to be as innovative and creative as possible.
Well, so far I haven't been able to get Alexa to be able to spell or understand the words that I'm giving her. So I'm staying ahead of the AI at the moment. But I'm sure it's going to change. Bill Carlson, it's been a pleasure to have you on. I promised you a minute that you'd be able to tell the folks who elected you thank you, and that those who didn't elect you, you're still going to work for them. So would you like to do that?
Sure, you just said that too, but thanks to everybody who supported me. You know, we had an overwhelming victory, and my office is very busy getting feedback from folks and working on issues. And if you have them, please call my office. You can email me, bill.carlson@tampagov.net. And we're happy to look at your issues. And if they're from some other part of the city, I'm happy to look at them or forward them. But we want to make sure we provide a high level of customer service, address the issues that people have throughout the city, and we want to work with the community to really take Tampa to the next level. Just to end, in my campaign, I said we have to have higher expectations. It's not about saying that we're going to be better than Charlotte and Austin. We've got to think way past them and think about, how do we leapfrog to be one of the very best cities in the world? How do we step ahead of what other cities have done and really innovate to make this an even more special place?
That's really a very good point. When you say, let's get better than Detroit, or better than this, or better than that, you're setting a goal which has a limit on it. Once you get better than them, you start sliding back. Right. So I like your thought that no, we've got to leapfrog them and keep on going to the next level, whatever that is. I would love to have you back. Will you come back?
Sure, please, whenever.
There's so many things that I want to. I'd love to hear more about the arts and the value of the arts. I'd like to hear more about innovation and what we can do, transportation. And you've got a wealth of information about the people in the Far East who are going to be our markets, or could be our markets. So I'm sure you've got some ideas there too. Well, so will you come back?
Yeah, sure. And one last thing, if I could, programs like this are really important because they're creating the jobs for the future too. I went to Brooklyn Public Access a couple years ago. $6 million. Can you believe it? But the way they look at it is, it's not about providing public access to information anymore. It's about training people to work in the new economy. It's they're an incubator for new TV shows or new YouTube shows. And you all are doing the same thing. It's part of this arts economy, part of the creative and innovation economy that we need to build.
I'm sure happy to hear you say that, because we are the only public access station in the state of Florida with their lights on still. The rest of them have all been killed. Bill Carlson,
thank you so much.
With me. District 4, Tampa City Council. You're unique, you're special, and you're great. Tell yourself so often, because you are, and we'll talk to you again on Spotlight on Government.